Chapter 1, The Last Stand. The crimson warning lights bathed Commander Elena Vasquez's weathered face as she stared at the tactical display. 12 alien fleets, representing every major galactic empire, hung in the void just beyond the Terran perimeter, their combined firepower enough to glass 100 worlds. Yet not one dared cross the invisible line that surrounded Earth's final colony. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked through the bridge's tense silence, "the Zephyrian fleet is requesting permission to retreat." Elena almost smiled. Almost. The Zephyrians, conquerors of the Andromeda Spiral, devourers of civilizations, were asking permission to run away. From humans. From her. "Tell them," she said, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's last hope, "that the Terran perimeter remains operational." The lieutenant's fingers trembled as he relayed the message. Elena understood his fear. Hell, she felt it too. But 23 years defending this godforsaken rock had taught her something the aliens were only now learning: sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing left to lose. Chapter 2, The Making of a Monster. 3 months earlier, the transport ship New Horizons shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, and Dr. Marcus Webb pressed his face against the porthole, eager for his first glimpse of Kepler 442b, humanity's second Earth. What he saw instead was a scarred, broken world wrapped in the skeletal remains of orbital defense platforms. "Welcome to paradise," muttered Captain Torres, the transport's grizzled pilot. "Though most folks round here just call it hell." Marcus had read the reports, of course. Kepler 442b was humanity's most remote colony, established during the Great Expansion 2 centuries ago. When the Galactic Federation had turned hostile and begun systematically exterminating human colonies, most outer worlds had fallen within months. Kepler 442b should have been among the first to die. Instead, it had become something else entirely. The shuttle descended through an atmosphere thick with industrial smog and the smoke of countless battles. As they broke through the cloud cover, Marcus saw his new home in all its terrifying glory: a planet-wide fortress of interconnected military installations, weapons foundries, and refugee camps. Every square kilometer seemed dedicated to one purpose: war. 15 billion souls down there, Torres said, noting Marcus's expression. Refugees from every human world the aliens took. The perimeter's all that stands between them and extinction. The Terran perimeter. Even in the inner systems, people spoke of it in whispers. An impenetrable sphere of defense technologies that no alien force had ever breached. Some called it humanity's greatest achievement. Others called it a prison. Marcus was about to discover it was both. Chapter 3, The Weight of Command. Commander Elena Vasquez hadn't slept properly in 17 years. She stood in the command center of Station Alpha, the nerve center of the Terran perimeter, watching feeds from 1,000 different sensors. At 54, she looked 70, her black hair streaked with premature gray, her dark eyes carrying the weight of every decision that had kept humanity's last world alive. "Status report," she called out, her daily ritual beginning. "Perimeter holding at 97% efficiency," reported her aide, Colonel Harrison. "Minor fluctuations in Sector 7, but within acceptable parameters." Refugee intake. Another transport arrived from the Centauri ruins. 3,000 survivors. "We're housing them in temporary facilities until permanent structures can be built." Elena nodded grimly. There were always more refugees, always more broken souls fleeing the systematic genocide sweeping the galaxy. Each arrival was a victory and a burden, another life saved, another mouth to feed in an already overcrowded world. She walked to the great observation window that dominated the command center's north wall. Beyond the heavily fortified surface installations, the perimeter itself was invisible to the naked eye, a spherical shell of overlapping energy fields, sensor networks, and automated defense systems that extended 50,000 kilometers into space. It was beautiful in its complexity, terrifying in its purpose. And it was killing them all slowly. "Commander," Dr. Marcus Webb's voice interrupted her brooding. She turned to see the newly arrived physicist approaching with a data pad, his face pale with whatever he'd discovered. I've been analyzing the perimeter's power consumption rates. If these readings are correct, spit it out, Doctor. At current draw, we have maybe 6 months before core systems start failing. The perimeter is consuming resources faster than we can produce them. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd known this day would come, had been preparing for it since she'd first taken command of this impossible defense. The perimeter wasn't just protecting them, it was slowly draining the life from their world. Options? She asked. Marcus hesitated. We could reduce coverage, create gaps in the defensive matrix. No. The word came out harder than she intended. The moment we show weakness, every alien fleet in the galaxy will be at our doorstep. Then we need to find another solution. Fast. Elena turned back to the window, watching automated cargo haulers ferry refined materials to orbital defense platforms. 15 billion people counting on her to keep them safe. 15 billion people she was slowly killing to save. Get me a meeting with the council, she said finally. It's time they knew the truth. Chapter 4, The Price of Survival. The underground city stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath Kepler 442b's surface, a vast network of tunnels, chambers, and hidden facilities that housed the majority of the planet's population. Dr. Webb descended through maintenance shafts and service corridors, following his guide deeper into the warren of humanity's last refuge. His escort was Sarah Chen, the lieutenant's younger sister and one of the underground's resource managers. Unlike the military personnel on the surface, Sarah had the lean, pale look of someone who rarely saw sunlight. Most people think the perimeter is just about keeping aliens out, she explained as they walked through a vast hydroponics facility where thousands of refugees tended to crops under artificial suns. They don't understand the real genius of it. Which is, it's not just a shield, it's a filter. Every piece of debris, every destroyed ship, every bit of matter that hits the perimeter gets analyzed, broken down, and recycled. Commander Vasquez figured out how to turn our enemies' attacks into raw materials. Marcus paused, studying the bustling activity around them. Children played between the growing towers while adults worked with quiet efficiency. Despite the cramped conditions and the constant threat hanging over them, there was something almost hopeful about the scene. Children's drawings covered many walls, pictures of Earth, of green fields and blue skies that most had never seen but somehow remembered through cultural memory. The thing about the underground, Sarah continued, is that it changes you. Surface dwellers think in terms of months or years. Down here, we think in generations. Everything we do is about survival, not just for today, but for the next century. They reached their destination, a massive chamber filled with manufacturing equipment and surrounded by enormous tanks of glowing liquid. The air hummed with energy, and Marcus could feel the power flowing through conduits in the walls. The heart of the operation, Sarah said with pride. Biofusion reactors powered by organic waste recycling. Every scrap of matter on this planet gets used, food waste becomes energy, human waste becomes fertilizer, even the dead. She trailed off, but Marcus understood. Nothing could be wasted. Not when 15 billion lives depended on perfect efficiency. It's remarkable, he said, and meant it. But if the perimeter fails? It won't, Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying a conviction that surprised him. It can't. Because failure means extinction, and we've seen what extinction looks like. Chapter 5, The Council of the Damned. The Planetary Council met in a chamber carved from solid rock 2 kilometers beneath the surface, its walls lined with holographic displays showing every aspect of Kepler 442b's defense and survival systems. The 7 members represented different aspects of the colony's operation: military defense, resource management, population services, industrial production, scientific research, intelligence gathering, and refugee integration. Commander Vasquez stood at the chamber's center, her uniform crisp despite the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd called this emergency session knowing it might be the most important decision in human history. The situation is simple, she began, her voice echoing in the stone chamber. The perimeter is failing. Not from external attack, but from internal consumption. We're burning through resources faster than we can replace them. Council member Torres, head of industrial production, leaned forward. What's the timeline? 6 months at current consumption rates. Maybe 8 if we implement severe rationing. Rationing's already at subsistence levels, protested Dr. Kim, the population services representative. People are dying from malnutrition. We push it further, and we'll have riots. One option, Vasquez continued reluctantly. The archive project. Every face in the chamber went pale. The archive project was their ultimate contingency, a plan so desperate that even discussing it felt like betrayal. No, Dr. Kim said immediately. Absolutely not. We're talking about 14.9 billion people, Morrison countered grimly. The math is simple. The math is monstrous, Kim shot back. We're supposed to protect these people, not. We are protecting them, Vasquez interrupted. We're protecting their legacy. Their genetic material. Their culture. Everything that makes humanity human. Council member Zhang, the soft-spoken head of scientific research, finally spoke. The genetic banks are complete. We have tissue samples from every refugee group, complete cultural databases, even personality matrices from willing volunteers. Theoretically, given sufficient resources and time, human civilization could be rebuilt from the archive alone. Theoretically, Dr. Kim repeated bitterly. It's more than theoretical, Vasquez said. The automated systems are already in place. If the archive were activated, 100,000 carefully selected individuals would enter stasis while the planet's entire industrial capacity was redirected to maintaining the perimeter indefinitely. She gestured to the holographic displays, which shifted to show detailed plans for the massive undertaking. The selected survivors would represent every aspect of human knowledge and culture. Scientists, artists, engineers, philosophers. When the galactic situation stabilizes, whether that takes decades or centuries, they would emerge to rebuild. And the other 14.9 billion? Kim asked quietly. Vasquez met her gaze steadily. Painless termination. They would simply sleep. No suffering. No fear. They would go to sleep believing humanity would continue. The chamber fell into a terrible silence. Outside, 15 billion people went about their daily lives, unaware that their continued existence was being debated in the darkness below. Finally, Council Member Rodriguez, head of intelligence, spoke. There is an alternative. All eyes turned to him. Rodriguez was a thin, intense man who rarely spoke in council sessions, preferring to observe and analyze. The aliens fear us, he continued. Not just our weapons or our defenses, but something deeper. In 23 years, 12 different galactic civilizations have sent fleets to break the perimeter. Not one has even attempted a direct assault. Because they know they'd fail, Morrison said. No, Rodriguez shook his head. Because they're afraid of what we might do if cornered. Think about it, what kind of species builds something like the perimeter? What kind of people turn an entire world into a fortress and convince 15 billion individuals to live underground rather than surrender? Desperate people, Dr. Kim said. Exactly. And desperation makes humans unpredictable. The aliens don't know what our breaking point is, but they suspect it would be unpleasant for everyone involved. Vasquez felt a chill run down her spine. What are you suggesting? Rodriguez activated a new set of displays, showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The aliens maintain their distance not just because of our defenses, but because they believe we're capable of something truly terrible if pushed too far. What if we confirmed their worst fears? Rodriguez. Morrison's voice carried a warning. I'm talking about a bluff, General. A massive, galaxy-spanning bluff that makes every alien civilization believe that attacking Earth's last colony would trigger something catastrophic for everyone. And if they call our bluff? Zhang asked. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Then we pray we've bought enough time to find a real solution. Chapter 6, The Bluff of Ages Dar. Webb stood in the perimeter's primary control chamber, watching technicians make final adjustments to systems he barely understood. Over the past month, Rodriguez's plan had evolved from desperate theory to terrifying reality. The idea was elegant in its simplicity: convince every alien civilization that humanity possessed a dead man's switch, a weapon so terrible that it would only be deployed if the species faced extinction. Not just any weapon, but something that would threaten all life in the galaxy. The beauty of it, Rodriguez explained as they watched the preparations, is that we don't actually have to build the damn thing. We just have to make them believe we have it. The plan involved modifications to the perimeter itself. Using the existing sensor network, they would create the illusion of a massive construction project in the planet's core. False energy signatures, fake material transports, fabricated research data, all designed to suggest that humanity was building something unthinkable. But what happens when they realize it's a fake? Webb asked. They won't, Commander Vasquez replied, joining the conversation. She looked haggard but determined. Because the bluff is too terrible to test. Think about it from their perspective: what if they're wrong? What if humans really are insane enough to build a galaxy killer? Is defeating one human colony worth risking universal extinction? Webb had to admit the logic was sound, if terrifying. Over the past weeks, they'd carefully leaked information through intelligence networks, let alien spies discover classified documents, and even allowed a few reconnaissance probes to detect the fake construction signatures. The results had been immediate and dramatic. The 12 alien fleets that had maintained their distant blockade for months suddenly began backing away. Emergency sessions were called in alien parliaments. Several smaller civilizations had sent diplomatic overtures, offering to mediate between humanity and its enemies. It's working, Sarah Chen reported from her monitoring station. Long-range sensors show the Zephyrian fleet just jumped to hyperspace. They're retreating to the outer system. A cheer went up from the control room staff, but Vasquez remained grim. Don't celebrate yet. This is just the first phase. She was right. The bluff had bought them time and space, but it hadn't solved their fundamental problem. The perimeter was still consuming resources at an unsustainable rate, and 15 billion people still depended on its protection. Commander, Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. You need to see this. We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Federation Council. Vasquez's expression darkened. The Galactic Federation was the alliance of species that had declared war on humanity decades ago. They were also the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Put it through. The main display flickered and resolved into the image of Ambassador Veltar, a tall, elegant being from the Altarian collective. Veltar had been humanity's friend once, before the war changed everything. Commander Vasquez, the ambassador began, its translated voice carrying undertones of both respect and fear. The council has asked me to open negotiations regarding the current situation. What situation would that be, Ambassador? Vasquez replied carefully. Please, Commander. We both know what your species has constructed beneath that planet's surface. The quantum resonance signatures are unmistakable. Webb felt his heart stop. The aliens weren't just falling for the bluff, they were adding their own details to make it more believable. The Council is prepared to offer terms, Veltar continued. Complete withdrawal of all Federation forces from your system. Recognition of Kepler 442b as a sovereign human territory. Even provision of resources for your population concerns. In exchange for dismantling of the device. Complete destruction of all research data. And your personal assurance that humanity will never again pursue such weapons. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. Around the control room, people held their breath. The offer was everything they'd hoped for: recognition, protection, resources. All they had to do was admit they'd been lying about having a galaxy-ending superweapon. Which, of course, they couldn't do without destroying the entire bluff. I'll need time to consult with my people, Vasquez said finally. Of course. But Commander, please understand that this offer represents the absolute limit of the Council's patience. There are factions within the Federation that would prefer a more direct solution to the current crisis. The transmission ended, leaving the control room in stunned silence. They're threatening to call our bluff, Rodriguez said quietly. No, Vasquez replied, her voice carrying a new note of steel. They're threatening to kill 15 billion people because they're afraid of what we might do in return. That's not the same thing at all. Chapter 7, The Final Gambit. The message from Earth arrived 3 days later, transmitted through the quantum communication array that connected humanity's scattered survivors. It was brief, encoded, and devastating. Terra Prime fallen. Federation forces occupying Sol system. Kepler 442b now Sol human stronghold. Acknowledge. Vasquez read the message 3 times before the words truly sank in. Earth, humanity's birthworld, the cradle of their civilization, was gone. The Federation had finally gathered enough courage to assault humanity's heartland, betting that the colony at Kepler 442b wouldn't risk galactic annihilation to save their homeworld. They'd been right. How many? She asked the communication technician. Unknown, Commander. The quantum array went dark mid-transmission. But based on the final data packets. The young man's voice broke. Maybe a few million made it to the evacuation ships. Out of 12 billion. The weight of it crashed over her like a physical blow. 15 billion refugees on her world, and now they truly were the last of their kind. Every other human world had fallen to the Federation's systematic genocide campaign. Options? She asked her staff, her voice mechanical. We could try to negotiate, suggested Colonel Harrison. The Federation got what they wanted. Maybe they'll honor their offer now. They just murdered 12 billion people, Dr. Kim said coldly. You think they're interested in honoring agreements? The bluff is still operational, Rodriguez pointed out. They still think we have the galaxy killer. They won't risk a direct assault. For how long? Webb interjected. Our power consumption is still unsustainable. We've got maybe 4 months left before critical systems start failing. When the perimeter starts showing gaps. He didn't need to finish. Everyone in the room understood. The moment the Federation detected weaknesses in their defenses, the game would be over. Vasquez walked to the observation window, staring out at the industrial complexes that covered their world's surface. 15 billion souls, all depending on her to keep them alive. All that remained of a species that had once dreamed of touching the stars. There is one more option, she said quietly. The room went silent. They all knew what she was thinking. Commander, Harrison said urgently, you can't be serious. The archive project was designed as a contingency for exactly this scenario, she replied. Guaranteed survival of human civilization, no matter the cost. We're talking about 14.9 billion people, Dr. Kim whispered. Who are all going to die anyway when the perimeter fails, Morrison said grimly. At least this way, humanity survives. Does it? Dr. Kim shot back. 100,000 people in stasis pods, waiting for a galaxy that wants us dead to somehow become safe again. That's not survival, that's just a very slow form of extinction. Webb found himself speaking without consciously deciding to. What if there was another way? All eyes turned to him. What if we actually built it? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Built what? Harrison asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. The weapon they're afraid of. The galaxy killer. That's insane, Rodriguez breathed. The power requirements alone would be enormous, Webb agreed. But not impossible. The perimeter already generates massive amounts of energy. If we redirected everything, shut down life support, agriculture, manufacturing, we could theoretically build something truly terrible. And kill everyone in the process, Dr. Kim pointed out. We're all going to die anyway, Webb replied matter-of-factly. The question is whether we take the Federation with us. Vasquez was quiet for a long time, studying the data displays that showed their world's failing systems. Finally, she spoke. If we built this weapon, hypothetically, what would be the result? Webb had been running calculations for weeks, ever since Rodriguez first proposed the bluff. Complete sterilization of organic life within a radius of roughly 5,000 light-years. Maybe more, depending on the final design specifications. Including us. Definitely including us. And the timeline? With total resource commitment. Maybe 6 weeks to build and deploy. 1 hour to fire. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Outside, 15 billion people went about their daily lives, unaware that their leaders were discussing the end of everything. There's a third option, Sarah Chen's voice came from the chamber's intercom system. I've been monitoring this discussion, and I think you're all missing something important. Vasquez activated the visual pickup. Go ahead, Sarah. The young woman's face appeared on the main display, streaked with tears but determined. You're thinking like surface dwellers. Like people who believe in individual survival. But the underground has taught us something different. Which is? Survival isn't about individuals. It's about ideas. About legacy. About making sure that what matters most continues, even if we don't. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What if we don't choose between the Archive project and the Galaxy Killer? What if we do both? Webb felt his blood turn to ice as the implications hit him. Sarah, you can't mean, the Archive project preserves human knowledge and culture. The Galaxy Killer ensures that the species responsible for our extinction pays the price. Both projects together send a message that will echo through history. This is what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. You're talking about revenge on a galactic scale, Dr. Kim whispered. I'm talking about consequences, Sarah replied firmly. The Federation chose to commit genocide. They made extinction their policy. Now they get to learn what extinction feels like. Vasquez closed her eyes, feeling the weight of species survival settling on her shoulders. When she opened them again, her expression was carved from stone. How long would we have? With both projects running simultaneously? Maybe 4 weeks before the perimeter fails completely. But that's enough time to complete both the Archive and the weapon. And after deployment? The Archive activates automatically when the weapon fires. 100,000 people go into stasis just before the galaxy dies. When they wake up, they'll be the only intelligent life left in this sector of space. Alone, Dr. Kim said. Free, Sarah corrected. Free to rebuild without anyone trying to exterminate them. Chapter 8, The Last Dawn. 3 weeks later, Dr. Webb stood in the observation deck of Station Alpha, watching the final preparations for humanity's last act. The planet's surface had been transformed into something from a nightmare, vast construction arrays working around the clock to build components for a weapon that would crack reality itself. The perimeter still held, but barely. Power fluctuations caused the defense grid to flicker ominously, and long-range sensors showed Federation probe ships creeping closer each day, testing for weaknesses. Second thoughts? Commander Vasquez asked, joining him at the observation window. Every day, he admitted. But then I remember Earth. 12 billion people murdered because the Federation was afraid of competition. Maybe this is justice. Or maybe it's just revenge dressed up in fancy words. Webb studied her profile. Do you care about the difference? Not anymore. Below them, automated systems loaded the final components of the Archive project into hardened storage chambers. 100,000 volunteers had already entered the preliminary stasis pods, waiting for the final activation sequence. Each pod contained not just a person, but carefully curated cultural materials, art, literature, scientific knowledge, even recordings of human laughter and song. Will they thank us? Webb asked. The survivors, when they wake up to a dead galaxy? Probably not, Vasquez replied. But they'll be alive to curse our memory, and that's what matters. An alert tone sounded through the station. Lieutenant Chen's voice followed, Commander, we're detecting massive hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. The Federation fleet is moving in. Vasquez activated her communication unit. All stations, this is command. Final countdown is now active. T-6 hours to weapon deployment. She turned to Webb. It's time, Doctor. Are the calculations final? Webb nodded grimly. The weapon was a masterpiece of theoretical physics turned into terrible reality, a quantum cascade device that would unravel the fundamental forces holding matter together. When triggered, it would spread at light speed in all directions, breaking down atomic bonds and reducing everything in its path to component particles. It was the ultimate expression of human ingenuity, a device that could end worlds, systems, entire sectors of space. The Federation had feared humanity's potential for destruction, and now they would experience it firsthand. Weapon status? Vasquez asked. Charging cycle complete. Targeting systems locked onto the quantum foundations of local spacetime. When fired, the cascade will propagate outward at exactly the speed of light. Giving us how long? For years, 7 months, 16 days before the wave reaches Earth's location. About 12 years before it hits the Federation's core worlds. Just enough time for the galaxy to understand what was coming. Just enough time for every species that had participated in humanity's genocide to contemplate their fate. Archive status. All pods loaded and sealed. Stasis activation will occur automatically 60 seconds before weapon deployment. The survivors will sleep through the end of everything. Through the observation window, they watched as the massive construction arrays began their final alignment. The weapon itself was invisible, a series of quantum field generators buried deep in the planet's core, but its power signature was unmistakable. Space itself seemed to warp and twist around the focusing array. Commander, Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom. We're receiving a transmission from the Federation fleet. Admiral Kethvar wants to speak with you. Put him through. The main display activated, showing the reptilian features of the Federation's most notorious military commander. Kethvar had led the assault on 7 human worlds, each time refusing to accept surrender and ordering complete extermination of the civilian population. Commander Vasquez, the alien admiral hissed. We know what you're planning. Surrender now, and we will grant your people a quick death. Counteroffer, Admiral. Turn your ships around and leave this system immediately. Or what? You'll destroy the galaxy. Kethvar's laugh was like grinding stone. We know your weapon is a bluff, human. Our scientists have analyzed the energy signatures. It's impressive, but hardly the system killer you claim. Webb felt his heart skip. Had they miscalculated? Were the aliens actually calling their bluff? But Vasquez just smiled coldly. Tell me, Admiral, are you willing to bet 5,000 star systems on that analysis? Kethvar's expression faltered slightly. You wouldn't. No species is insane enough to commit universal genocide. No species has ever been systematically exterminated by a galactic alliance, either. But here we are. The alien admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of uncertainty. What do you want? Nothing you can give, Vasquez replied. You've already taken everything that mattered. Now we're just settling accounts. She cut the transmission and turned to her staff. Final weapons check. T-30 minutes. Epilogue, The Silent Galaxy from the Personal Journal of Dr. Elena Vasquez. Archive Survivor number 00001 Stasis Revival Date, Galactic Standard 2387.156 Location, Kepler 442b Colony Ship, New Dawn. Today marks the 10th anniversary of our awakening. I was the first to come out of stasis, as planned. Command protocols required the senior officer to assess conditions before the general revival. What I found was silence. The galaxy is quiet now. Not empty, the stars still burn, the planets still turn, but silent of intelligent voices. The quantum cascade did exactly what Dr. Webb calculated it would do. Starting from our world, it spread outward at light speed, unraveling the molecular bonds that held complex life together. It took 47 years to finish its work, sterilizing thousands of worlds, hundreds of civilizations. The Federation got their wish, humanity is extinct. We're the last ones, and in a few decades, we'll be gone too. 100,000 people can't sustain a species indefinitely, not without genetic diversity and industrial infrastructure. But we're not alone. 3 years after awakening, our deep space sensors detected something impossible, a transmission from the direction of the Centauri system. Investigation revealed a small colony of Zephyrian civilians who had been conducting research in a parallel dimension when the cascade hit. They survived by existing partially outside normal spacetime. We found others. A few thousand Altarians in underground shelters with experimental phase shift technology. Some crystalline beings from the Vega system who exist as energy patterns and were able to reconstitute themselves after the cascade passed. Even a handful of Federation species who managed to find shelter in pocket universes or quantum refuges. Maybe 2 million intelligent beings in the entire galaxy. The survivors of the survivors. At first, many wanted revenge against us for what we'd done. Some still do. But most have come to understand something important: we're all in this together now. The galaxy is vast and empty, and we're all that's left of the civilizations that once filled it with music and art and terrible, beautiful noise. We've started something new. A confederation of survivors, working together to rebuild not our old civilizations, but something better. Something that remembers the cost of hatred and fear. The children born since awakening will never know the old galaxy, the one where species warred over resources and territory, where genocide was a policy option, where fear drove civilizations to choose extinction over coexistence. They'll grow up in a universe where cooperation isn't just preferred, it's mandatory for survival. Yesterday, my daughter asked me if I regret what we did. If I would choose differently, knowing what I know now. I told her the truth: I don't know. What I do know is that the Federation made a choice when they decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. They chose fear over understanding, extermination over coexistence. In the end, they were right to fear us, but not for the reasons they thought. They feared our weapons, our technology, our potential for violence. What they should have feared was our memory. Our refusal to let genocide go unanswered. Our willingness to choose mutual destruction over unilateral extinction. The old galaxy is dead, and we killed it. The new one being born from its ashes might be smaller, quieter, lonelier, but it will remember the price of trying to exterminate an entire species. And maybe, in the end, that's enough. End personal journal entry. Author's note: the Terran perimeter stands to this day, its automated system still functional after more than a century. Pilgrims from across the surviving galaxy come to see humanity's last monument, not to their technology or their weapons, but to their refusal to go quietly into extinction. It serves as both memorial and warning: this is what happens when you try to erase a species from existence. The silence that followed speaks louder than any weapon ever could.